All right, it's been about 24-ish hours since Maria Hill has been announced, and about 12 hours since I first looked at her on the live stream. Which, by the way, if you want to see some really, 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 really super hot takes, go check out the live stream. I'll link it somewhere. I'll link it on the bottom or in the description of this video in the first comment, so you can see the live stream. Because it's probably worth seeing my reaction of how this hero works. Because here's the thing: if you know me, you know that I like running my events and I don't love building out. It's basically a meme over on twitch.tv/G20 Woodworking and here on the YouTube live stream that every time I build out, I just lose, right? And I always talk about how like building out's the weakest way to play because you just lose. And I get that it's really not like I get it, but it just always ends poorly for me. So anyway, we got our new hero announcement, and I wasn't at first able to read a lot about her, and then everyone was talking about how different and unique she is. And I will give them credit. She is very different. She is very unique, and it's not a bad thing at all. I have some concerns though, and I think we're going to jump into that in a second. But really quick, we're just going to quickly go through the article. We're not going to go super in depth, just so that you have some rough background in case you haven't like seen any of the videos and you don't want to watch the whole live stream. All right, so this is our director of Shield page. We have Maria Hill. He does the whole intro, and it has this part, which we'll get into in a second. So as you might expect, due to her position as director, Maria Hill utilizes various Shield assets to maximum effect, and this is going to be like her big thing, right? So Maria Hill herself on Alter Ego, 3 recovery, Shield Spy. We're going to see this later that they don't really lean into Spy that much, but I hope they do moving forward. A lot of people in chat suggested that Spy would be more of like a Nick Fury side of things. So maybe she focuses on the Shield stuff and he focuses on the Spy stuff. I could see that, and that could be pretty cool. Okay. We're going to get into one of my gripes right away. You may include the maximum number of copies of 3 shield supports in your deck from aspects other than your chosen aspect. This took chat and I like 10 minutes to figure out what this meant. It's very weirdly worded. It's very weirdly worded. And it's a shame too because it's worded much better in here, where she can include the maximum number of copies of up to 3 shield supports in her deck from outside your chosen aspect. This first one is kind of confusing, where you may include the maximum number of copies of 3 shield supports. Like, it sounds like you don't have to go all the way up to, let's just say you're playing TAC team or whatever, right? Hashtag taco team for those that know. Join the live streams, you don't know. So let's say you have TAC team, right? And it makes it sound like, well, you could have 3, let's say, but you only put in 2, right? You may include the maximum number of copies of 3 shield supports, right? Like it sounds almost like that. Like it's very, very convoluted and weirdly worded. This sentence makes it a lot easier with she can include the maximum number of copies of up to 3 shield supports in her deck. Like it just sounds better. So basically, if you are a leadership build, let's say, and you want to put in a shield support from Justice, whatever it may be, you have to put in whatever the maximum amount is. So if the card says a maximum amount of 1 or a maximum amount of 2, or if it doesn't say anything and the maximum amount is 3, you have to include whatever that highest number is. And then let's say you also want to put in one from protection, then you can do that same exact thing. It's got to be whatever the maximum amount is. And let's say you want to do another one from protection while you're leadership, you could do that. Or if aggression has one, whatever it may be, right? So it's a very weirdly worded card. I suspect that when she comes out, because there's a lot of people that like don't get into the articles as much as we all do here. I have a feeling they're going to be very confused of what that means. So prepare for a lot of questions on that, which isn't a bad thing. It's just prepare, right? And then action, exhaust Maria Hill. Search your deck for a shield support and add it to your hand. So she starts with a 6 hand size, 9 hit points, a little squishy, which is going to be interesting. I think it's going to play into a lot of her builds, and we'll get into why in a second. But the searching your deck for a shield support and add it to your hand it feels very reminiscent of Cable, right? You can just find the player size scheme that you want. It's nice that she can just get the thing and get a 7th card there. It's not exactly like Cable, obviously, but it's kind of similar. So you get to like a 7th card basically, which is nice. You can either use that card as to actually play it, or you can just use it as like an extra resource card, right? So that's what she's got going on there. Her playstyle, blah, blah. She can include a maximum number of copies. We talked about that. On her hero side, which she's a 2/1/2 stat line, 9 hit points, 5 hand size still. Each ally you control gains the shield trait, which is very reminiscent of Star-Lord, where everyone gains the guardian trait. So this could be interesting with a lot of different builds. working with Sky Destroyer, and we'll get into that in a second. Reassignment action: move one all-purpose counter from a shield support to another shield support. Limit once per round. So this is going to be her big mechanic, right? Is kind of like a board management thing. You're not like, it really feels like you're just managing a board state with what she's trying to do here, right? She just wants to move counters around and do things with them. Again, we'll get into more of it in a second. But it's an interesting action and could lead to some interesting things. So she grants each ally control. We just talked about this. That's fine. If she doesn't have any allies in play, can move a counter from. If she doesn't have any allies in play, Hill can move a counter from something like Command Team, which we've seen before in the past, to Support Staff to bolster her resources and help her get set up. So Support Staff is a 1-cost support. It's a Persona Shield card. Uses 3 staff counters. Please give us Gandalf the Grey or Gandalf the White Staff token. I know it doesn't make sense for Marvel, but just, you shall not pass. Anyway, resource: exhaust support staff and remove 1 staff counter from it. Generate a wild resource for a player whose identity has the shield trait, right? So this could be hero or alter ego. You're just generating a resource. It doesn't care where it's coming from for hero and alter ego. And then you could generate for yourself because you have the shield trait as Maria Hill, or for anyone else on the board that's shield traded. I assume they're going to come out with, like, those upgrade cards where it's just like make somebody an Avenger trait, or make someone an X-Force trait, or make someone an X-Men trait, or whatever. I'm assuming that they're going to give that card out at some point in this cycle, and you're going to be able to give other players the shield trait, and this card will help them like even more, right? So I think that'll be pretty interesting. So, okay, cool. It's a little bit of a resource generator for shield traded things. It's pretty cheap. It has 3 counters. It's the same as Web Shooter for Spider-Man. Totally cool. She also comes with special funding to help you pay for some cards. So special funding is a 2-resource card. Response: after you spend this card to pay for a shield support, place 1 all-purpose counter on that support after enters play. Again, you're going to want to be manipulating these counters around, so it's helping you get those counters out. Okay. You might be able to see what my first issue with this is, but we'll get into that in a second. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Maria Hill has access to the agency's entire arsenal. And with that comes access to its fleet of helicarriers. So there's a bunch of 6-cost helicarriers, basically. Her main one is the Iliad. And we spent a lot of time on this because this is probably going to be like the meat of her kit, right? Is this card. And the reason being is I don't think we got into the reason yet. Wait. Let me just make sure that I haven't missed it because I don't. Oh yeah. This is the big sentence. I skipped it because it blinds me. Most of Maria's Hill kit revolves around shield supports as well. In fact, since she has no attack, thwart, or defense events in her signature kit, she relies on these supports to fill her combat role. Which is, we skipped a lot. Which is nuts. I mean, that's nuts. Like it's an interesting design space. It's really interesting what they're doing here. That's kind of nuts. So, okay, we have to get into these cards because we totally skipped over them. My bad. So, reinforcements, 1-cost event. Again, it's just an action. It could be an alter ego or hero. Choose any number of shield supports with a combined printed cost of 6 or less. Place 1 all-purpose counter on each of those supports. Again, you're probably going to want to use this, as I've already alluded to, there's 6-cost supports. You're probably not going to want to use it for that. You're probably going to want to use them for a bunch of other things. Shield Director, which is an interesting card. It's a 2-cost upgrade title. Action, again, hero or alter ego. Exhaust Shield Director, place 1 all-purpose counter on a shield support, which is, you're probably going to need a lot of that. On the double, it's a 0-cost event. Ready action, so hero or alter ego. Ready any number of shield supports with a combined printed cost of 6 or less. Okay. And then special funding is what we talked about. Man, we just like skipped right over all this, went straight to special funding. That's hilarious. You can tell I've been through this article so many times already. All right, so that's all interesting. So we got to get into the Iliad, which is like the big card. It's a 6-cost support. It comes in with 3 tokens. Shield card. Obviously, if you use the special funding to pay for it, right, you could get up to 4 tokens. So that's gonna be ideal. Is that you're gonna want to get the special funding card to help pay for it. You're also probably gonna want to get Shield Director out to constantly fund this thing, because this card is gonna want to be constantly funding the Iliad, most likely. And then I think that's it. I think that's the main thing I'm thinking of. Oh, and then this, you're probably not going to want to do that for this card, but we can get into that later. So anyway, Iliad, 6-cost support, shield vehicle. Uses 3 mission counters. Action, again, hero or alter ego. Exhaust the Iliad to remove one mission counter from it. Choose to either deal 5 damage to enemy, remove 4 threat from a scheme, or heal 3 damage from an identity. Now, important notes. Again, this can be done on alter ego or hero side. You're dealing damage. You're not attacking, so you will not be retaliated. You're removing 4 threat. So again, if you're stunned or confused, you're not thwarting and you're not attacking. So stunned and confused mean nothing to you, which is interesting, right? It's really, really good. It'll help not slow her down. And then the healing 3 damage is fine. The problem is all this stuff is below cost curve, generally speaking. And what I mean by that, so if you have 3 activations with a 6 cost support, so you'd be able to do, let's just say 15 damage, right? Because you do 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage, right? So 6 for 15 is not really a good trade-off. So 3 for 8, if you double that, would be 6 for 16. So it's not that it's not a good trade-off. I shouldn't say it that drastically, but it's not as good as the standard. If the standard's 3 for 8 damage, it's below that. For threat removal, that'd be 12 threat removal. So that'd be 1 for 2 threat removal. Usually we look for like 1 for 3 or something, or 2 for 5 is like really good. This is generally lower than what we would look at. Healing, if you look at like med team, it's like 1 counter for 2 life. So that would be 1 for 2 essentially, and this is 1 for 1. So it's all slightly below what the curve is. And the idea is it's below the curve because hopefully you're constantly moving counters onto this ship, right? Or you're producing counters from the shield director and dumping counters onto that ship constantly. That's gonna be your rough game plan, really, is just to do that kind of over and over and over and just have the Iliad doing its thing in the background, right? And it's strong at doing that. My biggest issue with this thing is that it's 6 costs. I think it's gonna be really hard to get going. I think in general, people don't play 6 cost cards, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And I know it's a part of a kit and you're gonna like prioritize it, but it's really expensive. I mean, we're talking about on your setup, if you play this card, is a hand wipe, right? So like you have to start with 6 cards. You can get the shield from the action card, or you can get from her alter ego action, draw a shield card, shield support, and then you could play this card, and that's all your cards. Like even if one of those cards was a double, you have 1 card left over. Maybe that works out in your favor, right? If you end up with opening hand where you have like shield director, I don't think you can justify playing this card then. I think you actually play shield director because the thing is you don't want the Iliad like running out of counters and being useless, right? So like you have to build a counter engine, in my opinion. You have to build a counter engine first before you get this card, which means you're kind of just like hoping to get by if she has no attacking, no thwarting, and no defense at 9 health before you get this card. Wow, sorry, my computer's like going crazy. So that's kind of crazy, right? So like you have to build the counter engine in the beginning and then eventually get the ship out. I don't think it will work well. And again, we'll see in person. This is a lot of speculation. We haven't seen all of our cards. Just we're speculating here for fun. I don't think getting the Iliad out first is going to be the right course of action. I think getting the engine building first is going to be the right course of action. But again, if she doesn't have any thwart, attack, or defense cards, that means now you're relying heavily on allies. If you're relying heavily on allies, you probably need cheap allies. If you're relying on cheap allies, they're going to constantly be cycling in and out, which is going to be really rough because you're also trying to build out this stuff, which doesn't really help your allies, right? Like, if you got the support staff, yes, I guess that helps a bit, but there's probably gonna be one of them and that's it. So like, again, it's hopefully you get that resource generator out there right away. Realistically, by the way, because I know people are gonna be like, well, what would you recommend in the beginning? I would get Helicarrier out right away. It's a shield support. And again, we can look into this stuff soon, but that would probably be the best play at 3 costs. You can get it out, start helping pay for things, and then work on support staff, and then work on shield director, and just keep getting allies out there for cheap. I think you need to constantly be flooding the field with allies as just like cannon fodder because she does not want to take a hit. This is going to be Hawkeye basically all over again in that sense. I know she has a base 2 of defense, which is a little bit better than Hawkeye, I think. I think Hawkeye was a 1. But you're going to want to be getting blockers out there, or you could just exhaust with her to defend, which helps, but you're still going to be taking like probably 2 or 3 damage, especially against expert villains constantly. So it's going to be a tough setup board. And this is mostly for solo. I think in multiplayer, she's going to be actually crazy good. But I think for solo, she's going to be a really rough time. So anyway, that's a bit about that. So I start talking about there's a bunch of other ships that you can get. The Cersei is a 6 cause leadership support. only has 2 counters. Exhaust the Cersei to remove 1 deploy counter from it and choose a player. That player puts an ally into play from their hand, which is a bonkers strong card. Imagine playing Nick Fury, assuming you're not playing with Nick Fury at the table. Being able to draw 3 cards from this is really nice and getting an ally out there. As long as you figure putting 2 3-cost allies out there, you're breaking even. So anything above that, you're doing even better. Pretty solid. It gives us the possibility of some of those expensive 5-cost allies that I was alluding to earlier. Maybe you start playing them and putting them in more decks. I don't know. That could be pretty interesting. There's also the Pericles, 6-cost support and protection. It uses 2 supply counters. Exhaust the Pericles and remove 1 supply counter from it. Give a hero or villain a status card of your choice, and then give an ally or minion a status card of your choice, which is actually pretty good. We were joking last night on stream that if you really don't like your teammates, you can just stun all your teammates and give toughs to all the minions and villains, because why not? Have some fun. But it's actually a really strong card. And this is a card, if I was running protection, I would honestly figure out a way to try to make this work in a protection deck, right? Like even, throw out the whole shield thing. Just try and get this to work, because this could be, even for solo, kind of like that big hit game changer. I don't think a lot of 6-cost cards are worth it. Like even this one, like, is cool. I don't know if it's 100% worth it. This one though, I think could be worth it. So we don't see the Justice Shield. We don't see the aggression, or the Justice Ship or the aggression ship. But they do talk about this card, which I do think as a multiplayer card, this is going to be probably the most fun card to ever play. It's a 2-cost event, the Hard Call. Here, it's got to be hero action. Discard a shield support you control. So, like this, right? It's a shield support. Deal X damage to each enemy, where X is the printed cost of the discard support. So, basically, you can just ram your giant ship into the board, which I think is really cool. I think it's a really cool idea. And for a solo play, it's fine. Like if you're like stacking 3-4 minions and things are getting out of hand, it can level the game state and make it a much better playing field for you. Like this is the card that I suspect that like you will play when things start getting a little hectic and you can really kind of even out. As an attack card, this is kind of bonkers. With that being said, as a 4-player multiplayer game, let's say at 4 players, everyone has like 3 or 4 minions out there or whatever. So let's say you're sitting at like 4, 8, 12, 16 minions. Can you imagine? I know it would never be that high, but let a man dream for a second. Just smashing into 16 minions and just wiping that board out. Like that's going to be a really cool feeling. It's going to be really, really cool. So I do like the idea of that card. And again, I think it will work well for solo. I think for just multiplayer, just feel better, right? Better feels. But I do like the idea of this card. So maybe they do. We've only seen that. There's a handful of cards we haven't seen yet. Maybe they have something with defense that somehow like, the shield blocks for you and loses a counter or something like that as like a quote unquote defense card. Like even though this isn't an attack card, it's basically a damage dealing card. So maybe they have a preventing damage one with tokens or something. I don't know. Like you remove a counter off of support and whatever its resources is, that's what you can like prevent damage for. I don't know. Just spitballing here. Maybe that's what they do to get around that whole thing, because that will make it, for me at least, more palatable to be able to play it. To basically be able to play it. So anyway, I like that card. I think it'll be pretty cool. Then it gets into some of our other stuff. We discussed Victoria Hand, 3-cost ally, 2/1/2 stat line. After she enters play, ready as shield support. It's totally fine. This is the card that's probably going to have to pay for most of this expensive stuff. Organizational support. For leadership, interrupt. Again, so that's hero or alter ego. When you spend this card, exhaust up to 3 allies and or support you control that share a trait with your identity. Shield. Most likely shield. But you could do this for Web Warrior or Guardian. Actually, this will probably be an interesting Guardian card as well. So I'm actually kind of hyped for this card. Generate the printed resource on each card exhausted this way. So this is how you're going to pay for a lot of your expensive stuff, which I like the idea of this card. I think it's pretty cool. I think this is going to unfortunately kind of shoehorn her into the leadership. I think Maria Hill is going to have to be played leadership or your stereotypical cheap Justice deck, right? Justice Shield deck. Because right now, Justice Shield isn't too expensive. This is why like heroes like Hulk can run it really well and effectively. So she can do expensive cards with leadership with this card, or cheap Justice cards right now. Now, obviously, there's a lot of cards yet to be revealed. There's all the rest of this wave, which is going to have shield cards. So, like, there's a lot that, in a few months, we could be saying, oh, okay, now she's viable in aggression. And then a little after that, oh, now she's viable in protection, right? Like, we're just speaking in the here and now and not too much in the hypotheticals. So yeah, that's that. Then we have Grant Ward, who I'm never gonna play. I know it's thematic, but I'm never gonna play this card. 0 cost ally, 2/2/3 stat line, cannot defend. After you reveal a treachery, you may spend a mental resource. If you do not take damage equal to Grant Ward's attack and remove Grant Ward for the game, this never seems worth it to me, honestly. I draw treacheries like candy, and it's gonna be all the time. So what's the point? And the last card is Front Organization, 0 cost support, not a shield support. Play under any player's control, max 1 per player. When an encounter card would discard a card you control, you discard this card instead. This is to help you instead of putting out the Iliad first turn and then hopefully getting out Front Organization as well. Like you wouldn't have to discard the Iliad, right? It's just to support your stuff. And that's it. So that's a very quick overview of this. I want to get into some cost card stuff in a second, but again, if you want like my full reaction or recap, especially when I read the whole section where they're not going to have like attack, thwart, or defense events, which is still blows my mind. Again, watch the live stream. I'll link it down below. All right, so I was going to go through a bunch of stuff, but actually Marvel CDB is literally crashing right now. I had 2 pages up and then the one page just like crashed. So Marvel CDB isn't working right now. And unfortunately we're leaving soon. So I got to get this video out there. But anyway, there's a way, and maybe we'll do this in a future video to talk about, you can actually see how much like cards are used in decks, right? So there's about 3,000 pages of decks. This is a really like unofficial way of doing it. There's 3,000 pages of decks in Marvel CDB. You could search for a particular card and see how many pages of decks it's used in. So for example, I think there's 3010 I just saw. If I use Nick Fury, he's like in 1,000. So he's like a third of the decks in the game uses Nick Fury, right? Okay. So if you look up most of these things, and you can do this in your free time because I would show you now, but I can't because the website's down and I can't click on any of these things. I'm scared to click on them. Pretty much all these are used very, very rarely. I mean, pool inspection, which I know a lot of people don't use pool inspection because they don't use the pool deck, even though it's gotten a little bit of a resurgence. Can I hover over it? Is it going to yell at me? Oh, I can. So the pool cards, like people are getting a little more into, but still it's a 6 cost card. And excuse me, it's used in like 5 pages worth. It's very rarely used. Same with the bomb, right? It's not used that much. It's used very rarely. So again, people might go, well, that's not a good comparison what to use. But even when you look at like Captain America Steve Rogers, which lets you reduce the cost, like he's not used that much. Captain Marvel's not used too much. Beta Ray, no one really uses. Doom, a lot of people like try to use. I think he was like 50, 60 pages, like a fair amount, but not a ton. I think he'll see more life in the shield stuff moving forward. Hemdell is not someone that a lot of people use. Giant Man I use, but it's hard to play him. Hercules, not a lot of people use. Spider-Man Peter Parker use a bit more. And then Storm is a good idea. But again, you get to reduce her down to 4, which makes her a little more viable, but she's not used a ton. So I apologize. I really wish I could have shown you the pages and what they would use. Again, you can go into it. It's not that they're not used at all, but I think generally speaking, people shy away from these 5 or 6 cost cards because they are generally hard. They are generally harder to pull off and harder to use. Will Maria Hill's resource generators and what she's doing kind of make it work out? I don't know. Maybe we'll have to see. All right. So here's the thing. I know Maria Hill isn't going to fit into my playstyle. She's just not. There's no shot she fits into my playstyle whatsoever. And that's okay, right? I don't mind that. I'm not upset about that. I am actually excited that they're pushing the space of design further out, right? I think that's inherently a good thing for the game. They need to do those things because if they just keep doing kind of like the same thing over and over, we're all going to get bored of it. We're not going to want to play the game anymore. So they have to do this. And there's a lot of people that really enjoy building out. And I think Maria Hill will be a very good hero for those people. There are a lot of good things about her in that regard. I think using a card like that tough call, what is it? The hard call. The hard call in a multiplayer game, I think is going to feel really good. I'm actually kind of hyped to do that. I think all that stuff can be really good. My concern is as a solo player, right? I am primarily solo. This community, as I've told you before, is primarily solo, like way more solo players than I thought. And I think a lot of people just in general that, again, watch these videos play solo. I don't think she's gonna be good at solo. The math does not make sense to me. Now, I've been wrong before. And if I'm wrong again, I'm wrong again. And you all can make fun of me and point it out in this video. It's totally cool. But I just don't see the math working out. I know from personal experience, trying to run a 6 cost card is really hard to do. And if she has no way to reduce threat or ping off damage from minions or anything like that, like really a decent way, or defending herself, I'm just going to be basically trying to like get my board state ready while I'm getting punched in the face constantly, which means while I try to get my board state ready, I'm going to need allies out there constantly. And if I'm constantly putting out allies, I'm not improving my board state. And to me, this is the problem that I'm going to have with her. Again, I think for multiplayer, she's going to be very, very good. I think she's going to be very good. I think she's going to be a lot of fun. I think the solo community is going to have a really hard time with her. Now, hard time challenge, maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe that's a good thing. But I think the Iliad early on is a trap card. I don't think you play it first round. I think you have to get like the helicarrier out there or something. You have to get all the resource generators out there that you can get. I think that is actually going to be key, because she's going to want to get to a point where her resource generators can keep allies coming out and keep the supports that she's been putting out there constantly out there. She's going to get punched in the face a lot, and it's going to be a tough time. I think if you run against a steady or stalwart villain, it's going to be a tougher time. If you run against piercing villains, it's going to be a bit of a tougher time, because you're going to probably want to run the Pericles a lot of times, maybe not all the time, we'll see. And it's going to be tough. I'm a firm believer that's going to be really tough with this. And I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts on the board, like a lot of board management without doing anything. And I think that's what's going to make it rough, because you're just going to be getting hit in the face. And if a minion or two comes out, like, I don't know how she recovers from that, honestly. You could defend against an easy minion. Let's say you take one of the hits and you have an ally get chump blocked for it. Okay, then that being the case, you're going to need the Iliad to constantly be healing you up as you're taking damage, and we haven't even done damage yet. And if she has no other way to do damage yet, that's rough. She doesn't have any attack events. So then you're relying on, if you're playing leadership, to help pay for all these expensive ships. Hopefully your aggression ship is good for attack, because now you need the Iliad to heal you up. You use the aggression ship for attacking. Hopefully you can use the protection ship to give you some breathing room, and the Circe to help like play out cards constantly. Like, and to get a bunch of 6-cost ships out there, like, that's gonna be tough. Like, it's just gonna be really tough. So I don't know. I think the cost curve. I think the cost curve on her pre-con deck is gonna be stupidly high. It's probably gonna be the highest that we've ever seen. And I don't. Cost curve matters, and I think a cost curve that high is just not gonna work out. We talk about this with other heroes, with like Iceman and stuff. That like, he's just a bit expensive, and I don't think he's gonna be as expensive as this one is. I don't think. And a lot of people have a rough time with Iceman. Not that he's bad, but have a rough time because he is a more expensive deck, and it kind of, there's issues that that stem from that. So I don't know. I get there's ways that you can make it cheaper with government liaisons. So you're gonna again have to build out more before getting in the card that allows you to deal damage or remove threat and heal yourself after you're getting punched in the face. The villain's putting on threat to the main scheme, and all the minions are doing their thing. And then people are saying, well, just stay down in alter ego so you don't get punched in the face. Okay, but again, there's a lot of scenarios that have a max size of 6, and if I'm an alter ego, I'm now just trying to build out to get supports out there to just keep that main scheme kind of even, when then I can't afford the Iliad, right? Like, it just, I don't know. We're gonna have to see how it works in practice. Like, I just, on paper, I don't see how it works for solo player. I really don't. And again, I've been wrong before. I want a huge caveat on that. I've been wrong before. So it's gonna be interesting. Again, for pros, I'm excited with the design space that they're taking. I think it'll be interesting. I'm happy they're doing something unique and different. I think for multiplayer, it's gonna be a really good time. I think people are really gonna enjoy it. Last thing I will say too is I think as the cycle continues, more shield and spy stuff will come out, which I think will help her. So maybe a lot of my problems now will be alleviated by assuming Winter Soldier is the last hero pack. By that time, those problems will be fixed. You know what I mean? Like, we can only talk about what we know at the time. So there's that. I just think negatively, I think not having attack, I think she's really weak in the sense of she only has 9 life. If she has no card to defend herself, that means she has to defend or running out constant allies to chump block for you. And if you're doing that, you're just slowly losing, in my opinion, at that point. Especially with trying to get 6-cost cards out there. So then let's say, okay, you run a lot of justice supports to help even that out. Then I'm just putting out a bunch of justice supports, and I'm not building out the way I should be to heal and deal damage. And then, once you start getting like a minion or two out that's also putting threat in the main scheme, like, you're done. And especially on expert. On expert, you're really done really fast. So anyway, that's my whole thing. The live stream had a much longer rant about this, and we in chat, pushes back on different things, and it's a really good conversation. I really appreciate them for it. So if you want to watch that, like I said, it's down below. But let me know your thoughts, right? Let me know your thoughts. Maybe you think I'm totally off base about the solo side of things. Again, if you say I'm multiplayer is going to be really good, I agree with you. Let me know about your solo side of things, what you think. What are you seeing out there that she can work really well with? I am happy that they're expanding upon Shield. Hopefully they do it for each aspect. It looks like they will, which is huge because I want more shield stuff out there because I think there's some cool things to do. Again, I really want prep cards and spy cards because that will help other things. Come on, Black Widow. So that'll help a bunch of other things out. So I'm excited for all that. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, all that fun stuff really helps out the channel. Listen to the podcast if you haven't done that yet. And I will see you all next time.